Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Imagine I just reacted every time. Okay, serious. Very serious things. My name is Connor. Hello. Original link to the video, top of the description, right below that, link to the Discord. Click on it, send you right over there. Preemptive like. History March. It's been a while. Phenomenal channel. Awesome. Hope you're doing well. Get ready to learn. Phones away. Yeah, let's go.
It is the waning years of the 16th century. Despite being nominally at peace since 1568, the borderlands of the Habsburg and Ottoman domains are still subject to constant raids and small-scale conflict. Given that this period of supposed peace between the two empires was commonly referred to as the Little War, it was clear that the resumption of large-scale military campaigns was ultimately inevitable. Although both empires had recently signed a 9-year peace treaty in 1591, any hope that it can be maintained was shattered in the summer of 1592, when the prospect of war became an imminent reality. Without a declaration of war, the Ottoman Beylerbey of Bosnia, Hasan Pasha, led an army of 20,000 Janissaries and attacked Croatia, laying siege to the fortress of Sisak. While the Croatians managed to repel the Ottomans, they were unable to prevent the capture of the crucial fortified border city of Bihać. Hasan Pasha again attempted to capture Sisak the following year, in 1593, with a force of around 15,000. This time, however, he was decisively defeated by a 5,000-strong Croatian, Slovenian, and German relief army. The Ottomans suffered nearly 8,000 casualties. Among those killed was Hasan Pasha himself, the Sultan's nephew Mehmed, and 6 other beys.
Okay, so, alright, I understand. I heard what just happened. Ottomans, Venice controls this. Milan. Genoa is here. Milan? Is Milan its own thing? Is it part of Austria? Or is it just a city in Austria? Or is Milan its own thing and then Austria its own thing? Of course, the Papal States. This is a crucial time for me that I want to understand, or just crucial area and states I want to remember, okay? So,
when news of the defeat reached Constantinople, the Ottoman nobility, urged on by the Sultan's sister, called for war. Despite the attack being in direct violation of current Ottoman interests and policies, Sultan Murad III felt obliged to retaliate. He deemed the defeat far too embarrassing to ignore. Accordingly, Sultan Murad III declared war on the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, and the two superpowers of the era began preparing for a confrontation that would decide the fate of Central Europe for...
Are they really the two superpowers? Like, when you say this is important, how did he phrase that? Did he say
Emperor Rudolf II, and the two superpowers of the era began preparing for a
Okay. Yeah, no. He didn't say, if he just said the two superpowers, that doesn't necessarily mean what I'm about to say, but he said of the era, which makes me think it was like, like the two superpowers after World War II were Soviet Union, United States, like, of the era. And so were these two, the Ottomans and the Habsburgs, really like the two most powerful nations in the world in 1596? Am I reading too much into this? I mean, Spain must have been strong.
confrontation that would decide the fate of Central Europe for centuries to come. Thus, the long Turkish War had begun. This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Whenever you're connected to
Am I sped up? No. Make sure to use the expressvpn.com/march, M-A-R-C-H-E. It lets them know where you came from, get some more money.
an unencrypted internet network, your devices are sending countless pieces of information out into the digital world that can be seen and intercepted, leaving you exposed. That all changes with ExpressVPN. They are the best at preventing hackers from getting a hold of your personal information and credit card info while you browse and shop online. What I like most is ExpressVPN's ease of use. I can just fire up the app and connect with one click from anywhere around the world. But what makes them truly the best is that at ExpressVPN you get the fastest speeds. They only invest in premium servers, making them consistently faster than any other VPN provider. And they use the trusted server technology, which makes it physically impossible for their VPN servers to store logs of any customers. Their privacy policy has even been audited by PwC.
Superpower.
Take back your internet privacy
on the
today.
same level.
Click the link below to sign up for the world's #1 rated VPN and get a limited time offer of 3 extra months free with your 12-month plan. Browse safely with ExpressVPN.
Let's go.
Understanding the threats that the Ottomans posed to Christian dominance in Europe, Pope Clement VIII re-established the Holy League in 1594. It consisted of a series of military alliances between various European powers, all united under the goal of driving the Ottomans out of Europe once and for all.
Okay, I'm guessing France isn't in it because they don't have as much of a stake as, you know, Spain has these areas. Okay.
Coalition included both Catholic and Orthodox nations. Of its members, Wallachia, Transylvania, Moldavia, and the Serbs of Banat had all been formerly under Ottoman rule and were now in open rebellion. The Serb uprising, which had begun in March, had expected to receive more support from the Allies. When it failed to materialize, however, the rebellion was ultimately defeated by July of the same year. In terms of military objectives for the war, the Ottoman army looked to seize Vienna, while the Habsburgs aimed to unite their Hungarian territories.
I'm pausing again, I know, but isn't it crazy how, like, we just always fight? Like, when there isn't the Ottoman threat, different Christian nations fight amongst each other and claim their Christianity to be the... But then when another religion, like the Muslims from the Ottomans, come in and threaten, and they're obviously much more... They're not Christian like the other nations. They all, enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of thing, and all agree the common threat.
Support of their Austrian relatives, the Spanish Habsburgs looked to seize Vienna, while the Habsburgs aimed to unite their Hungarian territories. In support of their Austrian relatives, the Spanish Habsburgs dispatched a force of 6,000 infantry and 2,000 cavalry from the Netherlands, under the command of Karl von Mansfeld. In January of 1595, Sultan Murad I died of natural causes. The situation quickly began to worsen for the Ottomans throughout the year. Forced to fight on 2 fronts, in Wallachia and Hungary, they suffered defeats against the likes of Mihai the Brave at Calagureni and Giurgiu, and at Esztergom against Karl von Mansfeld. These victories did not leave the Christian cause unscathed, however, as von Mansfeld was wounded during the siege and died shortly afterwards. As his replacement, Emperor Rudolf II appointed his own brother, the inexperienced Archduke of Austria, Maximilian III. However, despite this setback, the Austrian forces continued on to capture the castle of Hatvan in August of 1596. It is said that after the garrison had capitulated, every Ottoman, including women and children, was slaughtered by the Austrian troops. In the same month, the Ottomans launched a massive offensive under the personal command of the new Sultan himself, Mehmed III. Sources vary significantly on the size of the Ottoman force, with some putting the figure as high as 1 million. It is speculated that Mehmed III's army was larger than the host led by Suleiman the Magnificent 30 years prior, which had numbered around 100,000. As such, historians have generally estimated the figure to range anywhere from 100,000 to 150,000, in addition to 170 cannons. The Ottoman army of this period was in desperate need.
It's really hard for me to put into perspective the 170 cannons. I don't know what the norm is. I don't know if that's a really good, or I'm assuming that's a really good number.
Of modernization. The Ottoman army of this period was in desperate need of modernization. Composed mostly of light cavalry, it is estimated that the infantry arm made up no more than 20% of the army's total fighting strength. It is also important to note that the army did not have any heavy cavalry.
Question, is this when the Ottoman Empire is at its height? I don't really care so much about territory, but like its height of a power relative to powers around it. Like, is this the golden age of like the Ottoman strength?
It is also important to note that the army did not have any heavy cavalry. The only unit possessing firearms was an elite corps of 32,000 janissaries, with the rest of the army still being equipped with cold weapons. The Ottoman host moved slowly, not only due to its size, but also because the Sultan still hadn't determined the goal of the campaign. Upon reaching the Danube, he convened a war council with his commanders. Because the offensive had begun 3 months later than planned, they concluded that attacking Vienna was unfeasible this late in the campaigning season. Still with no military objective and unsure in which direction to take the army, some proposed besieging the castle of Komarome, arguing that its capture would secure the Danube frontier. However, many nobles opposed this suggestion, believing that the castle was too small and did not deserve to be besieged by the Sultan. After some debate, the council decided on a target more worthy of being...
That was phrased strangely. Did not deserve to be. It almost sounded like he didn't assault Komaram. It sounded, just by his phrasing, that because even though it might be a good decision, it's like it's not worthy of a besiegement. Or I'm guessing that's not what he meant. It wasn't worth it.
Being captured by... After some debate, the council decided on a target more worthy of being captured by their leader. Thus, the Ottoman war machine began moving towards the important border fortress of Eger. Because of its location, Eger acted as one of the primary links between the Allied Habsburg and Transylvanian lands. By capturing it, the Ottoman commanders looked to hinder the Allies' ability to effectively communicate and supply one another.
Okay.
Maximilian III, who was still encamped at Hatvan, managed to send a small detachment to reinforce the castle's garrison, raising the number of defenders to around 4,000. The Sultan's army arrived around Eger's walls around September 21st of 1596.
Guys, I have 2 screens, just so you know, if you see me switching back and forth.
September 21st of 1596. Despite its importance and having just received reinforcements, the border fortress was gravely unprepared for a siege and had little hope of repelling the Ottoman tide. When Maximilian III realized the size of the Ottoman host, the Archduke retreated to Esztergom. What is strange, however, is that, possibly due to his inexperience, Maximilian III did not immediately begin mobilizing the rest of his forces to relieve Eger.
I am so incredibly thankful when, especially, like a lot of channels have it when it's zoomed out, the topography, the elevation. and rivers, but this channel is really good, especially they're getting better at when you zoom in, it really helps me out a lot when I can see at least a somewhat accurate depiction on maps of topography, of elevation and, you know, geographical features, rivers and whatnot. And this is just amazing. And I can't believe how many fantastic history channels are on YouTube. History March, maybe the best maps.
It wasn't until October the 4th, nearly 2 weeks later, that the Archduke finally began to take action and make his way towards the border fortress. Mustering what additional forces he could while on the move, Maximilian III also sent word to his commanders to gather their troops and join him in relieving Eger. Additionally, Sigismund Bathory, the Prince of Transylvania, offered his assistance, which the Archduke accepted. Bad weather and poor roads caused even more delays. The constant autumn rain made many of the mountain paths impassable, as the dirt roads turned into thick mud. This made travel exceedingly difficult, especially for a large army with a large baggage train. Both men and animal were left behind in large numbers, either due to fatigue, hunger, disease, or combination of the three. Some sources have suggested that the Archduke may have lost up to a third of his army during this difficult march.
This channel is so good.
Eger's garrison surrendered on October 13th, the siege having lasted just over 3 weeks. In retaliation for Hatvan, the Sultan ordered every captured Austrian to be executed, while sparing the Hungarian units in the garrison. Upon learning that Eger had fallen, Maximilian III held a war council to determine the army's next move.
Why do they have a French-sounding town?
It is here that we should take the time to introduce the leadership of the Allied Christian forces. While Archduke Maximilian III was commander-in-chief,
okay.
Due to his lack of military experience, a council was established to help lead the army. The most experienced commanders were Adolf von Schwarzenberg and Miklos Palffy. Schwarzenberg, a renowned general and field marshal of the Austrian army, was responsible for most of the tactical and strategic planning. Count Palffy led the troops from Royal Hungary and had significant experience in fighting against the Ottoman style of war, having done so all his life. In command of the units from Upper Hungary was Captain Christoph von Tiefenbach. The Transylvanians were led by Prince Sigismund Bathory, with the mercenary captain Albert Karai commanding the prince's largest contingent. It is generally accepted that the Christian force numbered around 40 to 50,000, with 97 cannons. It included troops from all over Europe, with its largest contingent being supplied by Austria, Germany, Royal Hungary, Upper Hungary, Transylvania, and Silesia. Much of the army was equipped with firearms, and at least half of the army was composed of infantry. While the Allies had fewer cannons, these were of higher quality than those of the Ottomans. In addition to their advantage in modern weaponry, the Christian forces had complete supremacy in terms of heavy cavalry as well. After some discussion, the Christian commanders determined the
So this should be a bad time for the Ottomans, but let's find out.
After some discussion, the Christian commanders determined the best course of action would be to retake Eger. They assumed that it would likely be too damaged after the recent siege to mount any meaningful defense. They further believed that the terrain around Eger would further prevent the Ottomans from utilizing their superior numbers effectively. However, unsure of what the Ottoman plans were, they agreed to wait near the fields of Keresztes due to its defensible position. The Ottomans, at this point, still did not know the strength of the Allied Christian force opposing them. Given the size of the Sultan's host, he did not take the threat seriously. He detached a force of around 15 to 20,000, consisting of Rumelians, Tatars and Janissaries, along with 43 cannons, under the command of Jafar Pasha.
I have to point out why this is exactly why. So Meza Keresztes, or however he said it, this is exactly why it helps me to have the great topography and detailed maps. It's like it's an easily defensible city. In some other videos, I'm just like, oh, I'll take your word for it. But you can see why. They've got the city behind this river here, behind another river in front of it, and then he's got this little mountainous, not even call it mountainous, kind of very hilly elevation here, and this river over here, and they can retreat back through this mountain pass, and they can't like outflank them through these mountains. So that's why it's nice to have the detailed maps.
Along with 43 cannons, under the command of Jafar Pasha. Jafar Pasha, by many accounts, appears to have been an experienced and reliable commander. It is also worth mentioning that there is still some speculation as to why this force was sent. Some sources state that the Sultan had ordered Jafar Pasha to ambush the Christian camp during the night. This appears to be the most likely. However, it is also suggested that the force may have been sent to gather information about the strength of the opposing Christian army, rather than to confront it.
Why send so many
troops? The opposing armies would meet in the fields of the ruins.
How does that make any sense? If you want to assess the size, then send like 3 people. Okay, maybe send like 10 people. Why would you send an army-sized force to go check to see if...
ruined village of Meza Keresztes. The armies would meet in the fields of the ruined village of Meza Keresztes. To the west of the village lay the Kachi stream, with only 2 points suitable for a crossing, due to the swampy terrain that ran along either side of the stream. The village itself, along with many others in the area, had been destroyed during the siege of Eger. Jafar Pasha, having arrived slightly before the Christians with his army, had already ordered the Rumelian cavalry to cross the stream. He left his Tatar auxiliaries, janissaries and cannons in position to support from the opposite bank.
I'm thinking of Disney movies, guys. Jesus Christ, my ADD, I'm sorry. Pay attention.
Having arrived slightly before the Christians with his army, had already ordered the Rumelian cavalry to cross the stream. He left his Tatar auxiliaries, janissaries and cannons in position to support from the opposite bank. In order to further strengthen his position, he had the only bridge in the area dismantled. While the area underneath the bridge was still fordable, it would make any attempt to cross in force much more difficult. The Ottoman commander hoped to use his cavalry to lure the Christian forces into the range of his rifles and artillery. This tactic of feigned retreat had long been the favorite of the Ottomans, very effective against European troops due to their heavy armor. However, having received information gathered by their spies and through interrogating prisoners, the Christian army was aware that a force had been sent against them. Knowing that the Ottoman...
I want to say that'd be an even more genius strategy if, like, you're aware that to your enemy, your army has a reputation for being, like, not very organized. If you're a really good general, you could take advantage of that through this tactic even more, being like, hey, those idiots, they left out a party only to be taken into the trap.
Army was somewhere in the vicinity. They marched in battle formation and were ready for a quick response. Late in the afternoon of October 22nd, 600 forward riders of the Christian army made contact with the Ottoman vanguard near the ruined city of Meza Keresztes. Albert Karai, who was with the Transylvanian vanguard, quickly sent 300 lancers in support. Still heavily outnumbered, however, the forward riders sent for further reinforcements. Schwarzenberg moved quickly, bringing with him around 10,000 Austrian and German riders, in addition to the full Transylvanian vanguard. Palffy followed close behind as well, with a large number of Hungarian hussars. As Schwarzenberg's cavalry were about to engage, the rest of the Christian army also progressed towards the battlefield. The Rumelian cavalry, who had up to this point been holding their own, began to flee. Fortunately for them, the Janissaries were able to cover their retreat, keeping the chasing Austrian and Hungarian riders at bay with rifle fire. The Rumelians, however, did not regroup on the opposite bank, but rather continued to flee from the field.
Look how good this freaking map is.
As the Hungarian and Transylvanian infantry began to arrive, a fierce firefight ensued as they exchanged gunfire with the Janissaries across the stream. Up until this point, the Ottomans were yet to activate their artillery. Now, unable to retreat due to the proximity of the Christian forces, they realized that their only hope of surviving was to hold back the Christian tide until sundown. They unleashed their 43 cannons. In response, the Christian light infantry quickly spread out among the ruins of Meza Keresztes and continued to return fire across the stream. Schwarzenberg ordered 6 cannons to be brought up in order to help force the way across the ford. With some artillery support, Albert Garay rallied his troops and again made an attempt to cross, only to be forced back by intense and concentrated Ottoman fire. Due to the narrowness of the ford, it was clear that the Christians will not be able to cross without sustaining extreme casualties. The Transylvanian captain instead decided to look for another suitable point to traverse the stream. He was able to find one further north, bringing with him 800 of the elite blue uniform personal guards of the Transylvanian prince, along with some 500 cavalry. The Transylvanian captain formed his men on a small hill, overlooking the Ottoman left flank. He ordered his troops not to engage until the entire force was in position. When the order was finally given, hundreds of rifles roared into the unsuspecting Ottoman flank, throwing both Janissary infantry and Tatar cavalry into confusion. Looking to further exploit the chaos, the Transylvanian captain ordered his entire force to charge. The Christian cavalry made first contact,
Guys,
driving into
you're not going to believe me, okay? But I was going to say, like, a minute ago that they should send guys up to flank the cannons, all right? I was going to say that. You're not going to believe me, but it's true.
The Ottoman ranks, who were still reeling from the initial rifle volley. It was at this point that the Tatar auxiliaries fled, leaving the infantry to their fate. At the same time, the Christian forces on the opposite bank renewed their efforts to force their way across. The pressure was simply too much for the already demoralized Janissaries, having been abandoned by most of their cavalry, and now pressed on two sides.
Sorry, was that a Star Wars death sound?
Pressure was simply too much for the already demoralized Janissaries, having been abandoned by most of their cavalry, and now pressed on two sides. The resolve of these elite and professional soldiers, the pride of the Ottoman army, finally broke. With the rout of the Janissaries, what remained of the Ottoman force shattered and fled in the wake of the Christian onslaught. The lighter units of Hungarian infantry and cavalry began running down the fleeing Ottomans, only giving up the chase as night fell. The entire confrontation had lasted at most 1 hour. The Ottoman losses during this initial clash were around 500 to 1,000, with all of their 43 cannons captured by their enemy. The Christian losses were negligible, with sources stating around 15 dead, although this figure may be biased. Regardless, it can be gathered that the Christian forces suffered far fewer casualties compared to the Ottomans during this initial encounter.
I just want to say, other than, you know, the very early on Islam, like when Muhammad was around, and a few decades after that, where their giant, big, you know, starting conquests, where the Sassanids and the Byzantines were obviously, you had large Muslim armies fighting large Christian Byzantine armies. But after that, and aside from, you know, the Crusades, I was never aware of any big battles or wars fought between, you know, I'm 90% sure, but Ottomans are a Muslim empire, right? Yeah, they are, right? Because they have the sun on the logo of giant battles and wars between, you know, fully Christian and Muslim sides. I wasn't aware of that until now. So,
in a report sent to the Sultan before the battle, Jafar Pasha had incorrectly estimated the Christian army to number around 30 to 35,000 strong. It is further mentioned that upon hearing the size of the opposing army, many of the Ottoman commanders began urging retreat. Jafar Pasha rejected this notion for two reasons, however. Firstly, because his force had up to that point faced few difficulties and had not yet run into any resistance. He thought it would be shameful to return to the Sultan, having accomplished so little. Secondly, he believed that victory was a very real possibility, given the favorable terrain. However, Jafar Pasha had underestimated the Christian commanders, who were, however...
I can't believe the mere name Jafar made me go into like 30 seconds of blanking out and thinking about Aladdin, the Disney movie, only for me have to back up. That was pretty bad. I need to... ADD. I can't blame everything on ADD, okay?
However, Jafar Pasha had underestimated the Christian commanders, who were highly familiar with the area, having campaigned there for much of the war. While the initial Ottoman plan of luring the Christian army into concentrated rifle and cannon fire was sound, it is evident that they had not expected the initial detachment of riders to hold out for as long as they did. These forward riders had not actually been a part of the Christian vanguard, but were rather sent to find a suitable campground for the main army. The Rumelian cavalry, for whatever reason, were unable to lure their enemy, either possibly due to the cautiousness of the Christian commanders, or because of the narrow terrain, which limited their ability to maneuver effectively. Because the Ottomans were unable to rout this forward unit quickly, they allowed for enemy reinforcements to steadily pour in, and eventually for the entire Allied army to appear. It is also possible that the Rumelians were still in the process of crossing the stream when they were engaged by the Christian riders. Either way, their attempts to disengage and feign retreat turned into a genuine rout at the sight of the entire Christian army. It is also important to note that the Rumelian cavalry were simply not equipped for such prolonged close-quarters combat, especially against more heavily armed and armored European-style troops. This initial engagement further showed that while the terrain was highly advantageous to its defender, it did not guarantee success against a numerically superior foe. The Ottomans were also lucky that the confrontation began so late in the day, which helped them minimize the casualties sustained during the rout. However, despite this minor victory, the Allied Christian leadership understood that the Ottomans were far from defeated. The Sultan's main host still stood between them and Eger. Both sides prepared...
It just sort of reminds me of the Swedish-Russian thing with... no, it's not the best. Never mind. I was going to say, like, the Swedish being less numerous, but more better equipped, and never mind. I take that back. Never mind.
Still stood between them and Eger.
Eger.
Both sides prepared themselves for the massive confrontation that was yet to come. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed the video, give us a like, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new around here.
unsubscribe, unlike, resubscribe, relike, rebell icon. This channel's maps, this reminded me that there is only one king. It's not Epic History TV. It's not Kings and Generals. It's not Bass Battles. By the way, I'm not dissing these. Like, I love all these channels. History March is the king of maps, and that means they are the king to me. Maybe it's just me, but it just helps me out so much that, like, it gives me the ability to, like, think why certain generals did some certain things without the narrator having to tell me, and then they can focus on more just 10 out of 10. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you learned something or can teach me something, answer my questions in the comments. Hope you're all doing well. Love y'all. All right, chin up. Hope you're all doing well. If not, you'll be good soon. Emotions are fickle, my friend. Bye, guys.